Welcome everybody to the Sierra Interactive Mastermind. My name is Robert Sagers. I'm one of the product managers here at Sierra. Today is June 8th, the year is 2023, and I'm really excited to be talking with a couple of really great people who have a lot of great value to provide to me, to you, to all of us around how you can close more without spending more. And we'll get to intros here in a moment, but as we like to do in this mastermind, we're going to kick it off with a poll. And that poll is, how many leads do you have in your database right now? How many leads? Are you 1 to 1,000, between 1 and 5,000, 5 to 10,000, 10 to 25,000? Are you bigger? Is your database bigger than 25,000? Go ahead and select your option. And if you're watching this live, go ahead and throughout this mastermind, I want you to go ahead and send in your questions. Find the chat or the Q&A and post them, and we'll do our best to get to them. All right, let's get to introductions today. Buddy Blake is out on a boat in the ocean somewhere, intentionally so. He's on a cruise with his family. And so we have a guest co-host. So I'm going to hand it to you, Heather. Introduce yourself. Where are you? What do you do? Share about yourself.
Awesome. I'm Heather. My name is Heather Scofield. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Wyse Home Team Realty. I've been there for the last 10 years. We're located in Daytona Beach. We started as a single agent with an admin, and we've grown into an independent boutique brokerage that services a really big region on the East Coast of Florida. We've sold about 1,400 homes to date and about 300 million.
Excellent. And I like to I joke when Buddy and I are on that we're coast to coast. We're a different kind of coast to coast today because you're the East Coast of Florida. So we're going to jump over to the West Coast of Florida. Josh Janikowski, introduce yourself. Who are you? What do you do?
My name is Josh Janikowski. I'm a co-founder, co-creator of GGMS, where we are one of the partners here at Sierra Interactive, and we provide lead communication systems, conversion systems using the technology here in Sierra Interactive. And I started, before I came into this crazy world of real estate, I came from lending. And in the lending world, I basically specialized in like data harvesting and then running algorithms on the data that we harvested, and then the sales process behind finding the right people to then allocate time to go reach out to. Very similar to what we do here today inside Sierra, but way different because the technology here is like, I didn't have any technology. It was all send mailers and call people. And so that's why I'm so big on making your phone calls to the people who expose some interest. And we'll talk about that a little bit today.
I think we will. And I appreciate that, Josh, and proud to have both of you guys here. Glad to have you. We have results for this poll. Are we ready to go ahead and share the first results? Okay. Poll number one, how many leads do you have in your database? 30% of you, 1,000 or under. 30% of you between 1 and 5,000. 5% of you between 5 and 10,000. 25% of you in that 10 to 25,000 range. And 10% of you with a database, a lead database of 25,000 or more. All right, well, let's just give a little bit of context. Josh, Heather, a couple weeks ago, we were talking about in this market, which is, I mean, it's a bit of a difficult one for a lot of real estate professionals. We talked about how you can adjust your PPC spend. And so today we're kind of yin to the yang on that. And we're talking about what you can do with your existing lead database. And I wanted to ask you, I'll start with you, Josh, is every aspect of the real estate transaction sales funnel pay to play?
No, it's not. One of the crazy things that happens is, and there's definitely the aspect of paying to generate new leads. And that's probably how you ended up with 25,000 leads in the first place.
Sure.
So maybe it started as a pay, but then there was no play, right? It took a period of time and you either gave up on that lead, or maybe they exposed some lack of interest or whatever. And so the main thing that people kind of need to focus on is the fact that whether you paid for them or you harvested that data and put it in Sierra, somehow, some way you have these people. Paying to get them in is a great way to find people that are interested. But you have to focus on the leads that you've already had. And we have to kind of have the mindset, I believe, and we believe here at GGMS, you need to think about your database as just a list of contacts that kind of can be recycled, and the things that about these people are going to change. And so you don't have to keep paying for new leads to close deals. I would totally recommend that you do keep generating new leads so that 2 years from now, 4 years from now, those leads that aren't ready to go right away can be part of the conversation we're having today. But there's tons of money inside your database right now that is generally being neglected.
Yeah, so the frame of mind of having the concept that all these leads that are in your database, like they have life situations and contexts and things that occur, and actually thinking about that when you think about this number of contacts or leads. Heather, what do you think?
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, your database is money, and the best gift you can give yourself is a few little efforts to keep the data in it good and to keep some sort of contact with the people in it. Because the longer you can keep those touches with those folks, the greater the likelihood that you will convert them eventually.
Right.
One example I'd like to give real quick on that kind of will make sense to everybody is that we all come across people who say they're working with another agent.
Sure.
Or we come across leads that say, unfortunately, you've missed the opportunity and I already bought a house from somebody else. In our world, those people go to junk, but that's really a temporary situation because what did they just tell you when they told you they already bought? They're now a homeowner. And probably, and I know the math kind of agrees with this, most of their agents are not going to continue to follow up. They're not going to stay top of mind with them. And when things change in that person's life, you want to be the person that they go to.
So they're not a lost cause, which is a good segue into my next question for you all. And I'll start with you, Heather. Do you think that there's any such thing as a bad lead?
You know, it's really rare. The only lead that's truly bad is one where you have zero viable contact information for them and they're not using the website. Even if you have no good contact information, if they're using your website, they're still a viable lead.
And what do you think, Josh?
I was actually thinking about that, and I cannot think of a bad lead other than what she just said, because that was my answer, which would be no contact information. If I can't contact you and you're not talking to me, then there's no way we can build a relationship. We have come across leads in databases before where it's like a 13-year-old kid that logged in from their mom's computer or something. And even that, in my opinion, because I'm never going to give up on anybody. Hey, buddy, when you turn 18 years old, we got you, you know?
Do you ever recommend, Josh, you work with hundreds of clients. Do you ever recommend to anybody that they permanently delete leads from the database?
No, in fact, I encourage it to be the opposite for a couple reasons. One is that, like in our world, we upload the database into social media for retargeting to see if we can't get people to opt back in, and that does happen from time to time. But on a personal note, I actually had a friend of mine that came down from Chicago. I had Mike was the agent for her. She found a house. Mike got her under contract. This all was going down in the database. She then wanted to go see the house again after she had her offer accepted, and Mike was out doing something else. And he was like, I can't go do it right now. We can go over there and look at it like tomorrow or something. She went out to Zillow, reached out to an agent. The agent then purged that client using whatever it was that they used. And then we ended up going in front of the board over this thing, right? Because it was this fight, it was an argument, which is, by the way, a waste of time. All the money gets used up on the lawyers. But because we had the data stored inside Sierra and we didn't delete that out, when we got there, we actually won. It was real easy, cut and dry. You could see exactly what was going on. And then to tie it into what's going on right now, with all the tax compliance regulations and things that are happening, if you do the right thing and somebody says, remove me from your list, just put them in do not contact and do not contact them. And then that way you have a record of when that person told you to stop and you actually stopped, and they can't come back and try to do anything to you about that.
Yes, that's an interesting point, Josh, and not really what I was thinking, but I think important, which is that when you do have these situations where you might have to demonstrate some kind of audit trail or written that you did the right thing, somebody asked you to not contact them anymore, that you updated their lead status in such a way that you disabled some communication preferences, that you basically acquiesced to the request, right? And then you can display that and demonstrate it if you ever need to. Maybe just one more good reason not to permanently delete a lead from your database.
Yeah, I think the record keeping.
The record keeping. Yep.
Yeah, I think it's good to have.
Heather, do you all delete leads?
Nope. For that very reason, right? If you're a scammer or somebody we don't want to work with or have a mental illness or any of those reasons why you would stop communicating with someone, we need it to be in the database so that blocked status or that do not contact status is our alert not to engage with that person.
Right. That makes sense. All right, let's go to poll number 2. Poll number 2. for those of you watching live and for you watching later, you just get to see the results. Thinking about your last transaction, your most recent transaction, I'm curious, how long, if you know it, how long had that lead been in your database? Had that lead been in your database less than a month, 1 to 3 months, 4 to 6 months, 7 to 12 months, 1 to 2 years, or 3 years, or even longer? How long had your last transacted lead been in your database? Go ahead and select your option. And if you do have any kind of story or context to it, feel free to post that into the Q&A or the chat. All right, Josh. Josh, if you could give one word, and I know neither one of us has ever been accused of being too succinct in what we say. If you could give one word to help frame how real estate professionals think about their current lead database, what is the one word you would give to them?
About how they think about their database?
Their mental kind of framing of their database, one word.
Work.
Work.
And I think most of them want to hide from it.
All right, tell me about one sentence. What's one sentence? And then we can keep going.
Overwhelming at times to them, depending on the size of their database. I guess it maybe makes a difference for them. But it depends on which type of agent you're talking about. I deal with a whole bunch of different types of agents. I have some top producing people, and I have some people that don't even log into Sierra. It's weird.
Yeah. So work is the one word, and then overwhelming can sometimes be the one sentence. But in terms of how people see it, Heather, what's your one word? You real estate agent asks you, and I don't know if they ever would, but just kind of, it's just easy to think about the one word. What's the one word you would help them to mentally frame how they think about their database?
We spend a lot of, I mean, I think Josh is right. It matters who you're talking to, but we spend a lot of time with top producers. And I think to top producers, their database is money.
Yeah.
Money. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so the work leads to the money eventually, right, Josh? I mean, that's the whole point.
That's the one thing that I can guarantee you after tracking thousands of agents. They all have one thing in common when they make money, and that's they do the work. They make the phone calls, they do the things they're supposed to do, they do it in a timely manner, and they all get paid a lot.
Heather, you work with a lot of agents on your team, and I know you've got a lot of processes as the chief operating officer. I mean, that is like your focus, right? Is you've got things dialed in. What is it that you all that you would say, maybe a couple of bullet point things, doesn't have to be comprehensive, that facilitates that work that leads to money?
You got to have a process, right? Whether you're an independent agent, you've decided here's how I'm going to attack this beast, or you're inside of a system or a brokerage or a franchise where they already have built some systems and processes for you. But I think that's really, if you know what to do, training is everything. Whether you've trained yourself or been trained, you'll start to take those steps. And ultimately, real estate is an action-based business. The work you do is what leads to the paychecks you get. So if you've got a process by which to get to and to do that work, then you're on the road to success.
Okay, excellent. Hey, let's go to a couple things from the chat. So Terry, hello, Terry. Terry says they're in Knoxville, Tennessee. Go Vols. My wife's a UT grad. Scott Hack says, this is about going back to the permanently deleting of leads. Our friend Scott says, I delete the ones that are obviously fake, hoping they will return and sign up with correct info. Now, listen, Scott's been in the game for a minute, right? For a minute. I let's just ask that. Josh, what do you think about that? You get obviously fake, how would you define that, and would you delete them?
So I have a pretty weird sense of humor, and I kind of enjoy talking to the people or trying to talk to the people that come in. If he just means fake names, like, I love the creativity of the person behind the thing that comes up with, and I'm not even going to say it. We all have hundreds of them in our databases, but just the fakeness of what they do. And then what I tell our agents, I say, listen, if they logged in with XYZ as their first name, just call them up and ask them if hey, is XYZ there? Right? Because if somebody's going to put it in there, they did it on purpose. And then if you call them, and you can call them out on it, you can say, you introduce yourself, you have a little bit of rapport, you kind of use that as a laughing moment to build a little relationship.
Right.
And sometimes you can get them to give you their actual real name. but if totally, to me, what I like fake is like bad email, bad phone again. Like that's all I care about. Do I have contact information? I don't even care if it's no name. Like I'm just going to call you up and ask you for your name.
I won't ask you, Heather, if you have any examples of funny names, but do you do the same? Do your agents, I mean, are they able to utilize that as a bit of a moment of levity, like Josh said, to create a connection?
We find they don't answer. If they've given us fake information, they don't want to be talked to. But we recently put a former Donald Trump under contract because we let them, if they're active, if Donald Trump or any other name that's inappropriate to say here is searching our site and looking at properties, we kind of believe that the Sierra automations, the e-alerts, the things like that will do their job. And eventually they're going to see something they like, and they're going to request a showing or request more information. And one of two things happens. Either they give you their correct information on that form when they want to go see the property, or they forget that they put bad information in to begin with. And then we get to put a fun site message on their account.
Yeah, the
saying we'd love to
fields.
show you the home, Donald Trump, but we're going to need something more.
Yeah, when you utilize those merge fields, especially, can be a good time.
Yeah.
Let me add to that real quick, because one of my favorite features in Sierra, which I believe to be new, maybe not, but we now use it a whole lot more, is the way that the forms will get you actual real information that is different from what you had before. We'll get forms filled out from a lead from 8 years ago, and there was a bad email. If it's marked as a bad email and they fill out the new email address, they swap it out. And then even further than that, if they did have a good email, but they just gave you a new email, what I'm thinking is that new email is probably the most fresh email, the one that you actually want to be sending things to. And same thing with the phone number. So I love that feature.
Yeah, surferguy78@hotmail.com gets updated to gmail.com.
Yeah, it's a Josh at Gmail.
Let's look at the results for poll number 2. Your last transaction, how long had that lead been in your database? 13% of you said less than a month. 22% of you said 1 to 3 months. 9% 4 to 6 months. 26%, a little bit more than 1 out of 4, 7 to 12 months. That's over half of a year. 13% 1 to 2 years, and 17% of you, your lead from your last transaction had been in your database for 3 or more years. And that's interesting. That speaks to, the length of time in which you've been in the industry, but also probably some other things that you're doing in order to work with somebody that's been around for a while. Josh, I'm curious from you, if you can tell me, I know we've talked about, you work with a lot of clients. I'd love for you to kind of share a journey of a lead, of a recent transaction you're aware of, somebody you helped. What was the context? Were they a new lead, an existing lead, an old lead? How was their intent identified? Like, how did they raise their hand and get called on in class, if you will? What happened?
Well, I have examples of all different kind of leads across the spectrum of this. I will kind of just say broadly, first of all, feels like a game show when you're back here behind the scenes and we're doing polls and we're like talking and I'm watching the stats come in and stuff. So I feel like
it's fun, right?
Talk show host. I'll give a couple of examples, and I would say that if I was to average out, one of the things I think that of all of our clients, for the total number of transactions that have happened for everybody, I would say that the number is actually more higher than in the 3+ years, because we dig up a lot of old leads and bring them back to life. I love a brand new lead that comes in and transacts right away, because that's exciting, right? But what excites me more is an old lead that we wake up. So we just took on a client the other day, and on Monday they had their very first day of engagement. Now this has not resulted in a finalized transaction, but I just want to say that it was a 2017 lead that had been moved to junk in 2021. They gave up on them, left it sit there, 2017 to 2021, no more communication at all to this person. And then what we did is we use the fact when we take on new people, we try to think about them, and you guys should do this every once in a while anyways, just kind of recycle your leads out of junk back to whatever starting point they can be. Anyways, we engaged with this lead, and within like 5 minutes, and actually here, I'll just go through the whole thing for you. A 2017 lead that had been left alone in 2021. And then we engaged with them at 10:11 on Monday, 10:11 a.m. on Monday morning. We just sent them a text message with a link back to a landing page on Sierra's site. By 10:33, he had filled out a form saying that he wants to sell in 6 months. And that's awesome, right? Like that makes me excited. Like I woke you back up. It's like CPR. And so that's the kind of things that I track. Well, the part that really matters and the thing that is the bigger problem in real estate is that usually the agent doesn't do anything about that. But this particular agent, by 11:45, he's on the phone with the person, talks to him, sets a listing appointment. That listing appointment was for Tuesday. And now the process has to go along to get a list of property and sell it. So that's not actually a closed transaction, but it's the most recent one that was top of mind for me. Because when you give up on these leads and you shelf them back in some weird compartment or status in your database, nothing is ever else going to happen with those people. And you guys, I know the numbers. Some of you have millions of dollars worth of leads in your database. And for those of you with smaller databases, percentage wise, it's just like $1 million worth of stuff, right? Like you might have $5,000 worth of leads in there, but that's like you're only $5,000, right? And that's how it is in the beginning. So that's one story that I like. And then if I could just give another brief story, one of the things I get a kick out of, we got a listing for a client down in Vero Beach, and that client came back with a form. Just like I said, we use forms for all kinds of stuff, but we had done a retargeting ad that was just following this person around, and they logged in from a retargeting ad on Candy Crush. And so like, I'm a nerd and I go through everybody's databases. I'm always looking at stuff, and I pulled up the form and I was like, I had to call the person. I was like, can you believe you got a listing? This guy came from Candy Crush. And he was like, yeah, I know, it's crazy, right? When I was talking to the guy on the phone, he said, he literally told the agent, he's like, if you could find me on Candy Crush, you're definitely the person I want to sell my house. So that was, yeah.
Excellent. So the first one, I'll say, just high level bullet points. What I heard was old lead, had been in there a long time, had not been deleted, but had been moved to junk status, forgotten, sent a text message. So re-engage them in communication, sent them to a content page on a website, which what was on that content page? Was like an educational page, or?
It was actually a page called Pricing Your Home. And the text messages simply basically said, check out I'll read it to you. Check out this short video on my website called Pricing Your Home, which many of my clients find helpful. And it was a link back to the landing page. And then the Sierra opt-out text message went out after that, because this person had never ever responded in the past. And they did not opt out, but instead they filled out a form. So that still works perfectly.
So just again, it wasn't anything like crazy gimmicky or overly clever. It was just reaching out. It was educational piece. And then they filled out that form, and the agent within minutes got in touch with them. So like, that's kind of right there, a potential, like that's a repeatable formula. I mean, there's nothing about that that's overly crazy, or like sign up on my website in order to get my secret plan. Like that's pretty straightforward, Josh. It doesn't seem overly complicated or anything.
What we've been tracking is that people kind of know how to shop. And like for me as a consumer and me as a shopper, I don't really care what you have to say as a salesperson, not at the beginning level of it. I just want to kind of like shop you, and I want to see your stuff or whatever. I do a lot of mountain biking. And so I'm not trying to talk to anybody who sells mountain bikes. I just want to look at your mountain bikes. Show me a story of somebody jumping off of a mountain on a mountain bike. That's what I want to see.
Lots of mountains in Florida too. So
no, not really, but we do have like phosphate mines that are the tailings kind of, but you actually have to work. You got to pedal up and then go down for 2 seconds, pedal back up.
You got to work.
You got to work for it.
Hey, so Doc Mel says Candy Crush, LOL, awesome, 3 exclamation points. Speaking of Florida, our friend Steve says we get lots of forms filled out by people that have never coughed up any information, back to our earlier point. Heather, what about you? What was a recent transaction that your team was involved in? How did that come about? How long have they been in the database? Like how did you identify? How did they raise their hand? What did you do next? Like, tell the story.
Yeah, in the last couple of weeks, we've had a couple actually. One is a couple who bought a home from us in 2016. And so they've been sitting in our database, and, we do quarterly VIP events and things like that, different touches. But one of the things we also do is we do an email and a card on both your birthday and your home purchase or sale anniversary. So in this instance, it was the anniversary email, just, hey, congrats, you bought a home from us 9 years ago. We just wanted to say hi. And we got a response to that saying, well, yeah, we've been kind of tossing around this idea of selling our home. Agent calls back within a couple of minutes, like Josh said, got the listing appointment set up. Not only did we get their home listed and on the market and under contract, they'll be upsizing and buying a better home, but they also brought their daughter into the mix. And so we're going to be helping with the sell by on that transaction as well. The other example we have is a buyer that we just recently closed, was a 2020 Zillow lead that had never responded to us at all in the last few years. And that's one of the last leads we took from Zillow before we eradicated them from our life permanently. But she came in, we've been trying to nurture her for years and we just weren't getting anywhere. And so at some point we kind of slowed down our cadence with her. So she was really only getting like Thanksgiving, holiday messages like Happy Thanksgiving, Merry Christmas. And we did that through the holidays. And then into the new year, we just sent a simple text to her saying, are you thinking about selling your property this year? I hope all is well. And we got that response that she really did want to buy. She wanted to sell, but she was worried about inventory levels and finding another home. And so within a few weeks, we had her active on the MLS. She's currently looking to buy her next property. She's on track to, in fact, I think she closes. So she's definitely on track to get closed down on another transaction. So that was another sell by out of the database.
I have other questions I want to ask along these lines. I want to get to our next poll. I'm going to come back to it. Is that good for you all? I want to keep going with this. Let's go ahead and get the third poll up because a text message was mentioned more than once. I feel like. What's your favorite method of communication with your existing leads? And guess what? This is a multiple choice question. Phone calls, text messages, emails, listing alerts. And it depends. All right. So you can select multiple here. If you did select, it depends. And even if you didn't, feel free to give us more context in the chat. Okay. And let us know what it is that is your favorite method of communication. Right away, DC says, I use whatever the lead prefers. And so you go to what they want. I just want to ask this question of you all, Heather and Josh, both successful people at what you do. I'm curious, Heather, are you a little concerned as we go through this mastermind that this, like some of like the stories, the narratives that were just shared are kind of boring? They're a little boring, right? They're not anything crazy. Like you didn't have any weird, top 10 weird hacks in order to do this. What do you see that's kind of behind some of the boringness of these stories?
Well, I guess I'll jump in.
Yeah, Heather.
We don't want our home buying experience to be like an adrenaline rush. You want the process to be like easy. Our motto is easy as a day at the beach. Like that's how you want it to be from beginning to end. And so boring is best. Like you shouldn't have a bad story about me pounding you with sales messaging. You should have a story about a relationship that built and a transaction that was completed.
What about you, Josh? Is there some, weird hack and tips and tricks to all this?
Yeah. There's a super weird hack. And I said it in the beginning when I said what I think agents think of their database. It's called work. And what I mentioned as the stories that happened that actually just worked, and what Heather just mentioned, they both had a very similar thing, a theme to it, which was whatever the thing was that got you to the reason to call the person, if you do it quickly, you're going to probably get a better result. Like the percentage chance of success goes way up. I think of it like this, and I give this analogy a lot. When you walk into a restaurant, you have literally, your waiter or waitress has literally minutes to make a good impression or a bad impression on you. Your website is like your online store. It's kind of like your restaurant, if you will. And you're kind of like the waiter or waitress, and you have to provide this customer service to those that are coming here to shop. I mentioned a little while ago that the people in the world now know how to shop and use the internet a whole lot better. So much so that a lot of times they don't even think they really need a real estate agent until the very last minute because they're shopping online, they're looking on Zillow. But when they want your attention and they're at your place, like they're saving properties, they're doing things, that's your cue. And thank God that Sierra has this awesome automation system that can pick up on these activities, because it saves you all the time of having to dial through all these people to find the one person. It just says, hey, these are the people that saved the property. These are the people who looked at a house 5 or more times. Call them, right? And that's it. And you're going to have to keep calling them. So there's no sexy story. There's no exciting thing about doing your job. It's like sit down at your desk, call your leads, do your job, and cash your checks.
Let the technology serve you. And then when the opportunities surface, you need to act, you need to work.
Yep.
All right, Josh,
Yes.
in your opinion, what are some of the best ways to stay top of mind with leads that those watching have never done a deal? They've never done a transaction. What are some of the best ways to stay top of mind with those leads? Let's call them unresponsive.
So here's what I would say, and I wanted to say this when Heather was talking about the past client example that she gave. You guys have all these different tools in Sierra to talk to people with. So you have e-alerts, you have market reports, you have text message, you have site messages, you have phone calls, and the only one that takes human time is the phone call. So my answer to my favorite communication thing is this phone call, right? Because that's the thing that gets to the appointment and gets to the deal. But here's what I would recommend. I have 5 things that I would recommend, or the things that you could do inside Sierra if you choose to. The first one is set everybody up in your database on an e-alert and or a market report, either broadly for the whole area, or if you have an address for that person, or you remember that they live in a certain area, give them something relevant to them so that, and we use a lot of automations, as your leads are doing things and clicking on these things, you get notified about that through automations or just a site visit or whatever. You can build a smart filter that says visited site within the past X number of days. But let this leverage the technology that you're paying for, that your broker or your team leader is paying for you. And you will find that you spend your time a lot more wisely while you're doing your job. So setting everybody up, not everybody, but everybody in the proper statuses, and those are kind of based off your own definitions, get them on something. And the first channel would be e-alert and market report. I consider them basically the same. I would totally recommend that you set up your past clients on a search. So I search for the area around their property so that they can see digitally what's happening in and around their neighborhood, right? That exposes some curiosity, and then you can reach out to those people. You obviously have the text message channel. You heard me say earlier, sending out a text message with a link that goes back to your website because you can track the site visit. And I actually have a link that we're going to give to you. I have a link to a blog article here where we're going to give you like the kind of like it's a text campaign, it's a text message with a link that goes back to a landing page that's already on your site. Everybody has a free market analysis landing page on Sierra. And if you want to do that, it's a great way to try to engage with these people. And then one other thing, if you especially have a larger database, and I mentioned it earlier, start recycling your leads. Get out of this mindset that these leads that you put in junk 4 years ago are still junk. Put them back in what we would call qualify, which is unresponsive, and try to shake it up a little bit. See if you can find 3 or 4 deals in a month in there maybe. And that's kind of what I'm trying to say, is just like, let's use all of these communication channels. And then for an advanced tip, all of those things, if they hit your website, if you have retargeting ads on, the more people you can push to your website, no matter how they get there, they become a part of your retargeting audience. And then you can follow them around on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube and TikTok and Google Display Network. And you can really stay top of mind with them.
Candy Crush.
And Candy Crush, there you go. You can stay top of mind with these people, and you don't have to hound them by text message. You can relieve the pressure of that text campaign that you may have used to use. And you can let these other things, we call them digital action plans, where you're like just following them around online.
What about you, Heather? What are some of the ways that you work with your agents on your team to be staying top of mind with unresponsive leads?
Yeah, we essentially do the same thing. Our unresponsive leads get a lot of email communication with us. So holiday emails, event emails, market report, or e-alerts. Plus, like we do a weekly newsletter email with video and stuff in it. And then all of that gets followed behind with 2 or 3 times a year. We do a big call out, dial out campaign, and everybody gets a phone call. So, and a voicemail. So they're hearing our name and they're getting that phone number added into their caller ID essentially. And so connecting those dots and that works relatively well for us. And we have some similar, maybe not as robust as Josh's automations, but we have automations in place that are helping to bubble things up from the database from us, so we know who to call when, and we make sure we're calling at opportune times.
Let me just say something on that note, because one of the things that is a real blocker for team leaders, brokers, and especially the agents on teams And it was me too. Like, I just want to say that when I first started doing this, I'm the sales guy. I mentioned before I came from lending, and Mike, my partner, is like a digital whiz kid. Like, he's almost a genius when it comes to this stuff. And I was always very afraid to touch things in Sierra. Like, I didn't want to build a landing page, and they didn't have automations back then, but building filters, it was kind of like, I didn't really want, and I feel like that's how agents feel. You don't have to have a really robust automation system. In the blog article, I give you the actual automation that's going to track the site visit. And it's really actually very easy stuff. Don't be afraid to get in there and play around with it. I got a string there. Don't be afraid to get in there and just press some buttons. You're not going to break nothing. And in the worst case, you just delete it, you know?
Yeah,
But
thanks for that. Yeah, just reduce all the fear of the unknown and start experimenting. I mean, some things are pretty straightforward. Like, you've got a home anniversary coming up in 1 week, or a birthday coming up in 3 days. Assign a task to the agent for that lead to call the person, right? Or send a message, or whatever it is.
That's it. And then guess what you would be doing? You would be reaching out to somebody with an actual reason to reach out, right? Like, if our job as salespeople is to make phone calls, the good salespeople, all we want to do is talk to more people, right? So put me into that list that's a little bit warmed up, or at least I have a reason. I don't even care if it's like a bad email. If I'm calling to get a good email from you because we have a bad email, and that would be a pretty low quality phone call that you're trying to make, but like, hey, I'm just reaching out today to see if I noticed that we had a bad email address in here, and I was trying to send you this awesome list of homes that just got reduced in price here on CS the Key. And then maybe you get one, maybe you don't, but at least you had a reason to call them.
Heather, you talked about what you do for leads who are unresponsive. How do you, if anything, what do you all do for past clients who you've worked with in the past? How do you stay top of mind with them?
And since the dawn of real estate, I think your past clients are your biggest area of opportunity. So if you're not doing a lot for those past clients, then you have a lot of opportunity you can unlock just by starting. So we do holiday emails, top of mind monthly emails, newsletters, market reports. Every one of them after they close gets a market report based on the address of their home, so that they're always getting that feedback on what the value is, which neighbor's selling, things like that. We do quarterly VIP events. So some of these are like, come into our office and get a pie, but some of them are just a card that we mail to everybody, and the lead doesn't have to do any work at all. They get birthday cards in the mail and via email, and they get anniversary communications in the mail and via email. And all of those things allow us to keep all of their contact information up to date. It allows us to market to them throughout the year. It increases our return business. And we do the same thing to the buyers of our listings. We call, as Josh mentioned earlier, we call them orphaned buyers, because the other agent, we bank on the other agent's not going to take good care of that customer. So they get all the same communications, the same freebies, the same everything that our sellers do. And then what often happens is they come back to us, 3 years, 5 years, when they're ready to upsize, downsize, and they forgot we were not their agent to begin with. They really in their head have transposed it, and they believe we were there for them.
Yeah, that's really good. Josh, what do are you working with people who are doing the physical mailers and the in-person events in addition to some of the things like market updates and regular emails?
Yeah, so what we recommend, and we do work with people who do all types of different things, and we work with a lot of people that do nothing for their past clients, which is disappointing, but any mailer that you send out now with Sierra Interactive and the way that your websites are in our world, every mailer should have a QR code. Bring them back into your digital world. Let them see your online store. Every past client, in my opinion, should have that search. Like Heather mentioned, it's the list of properties. My dad sold his home a little while back, but the reason he listed it for sale was because one of the neighbors got 618. They had both bought around the same time. And then he called me up. He's like, the neighbor got 618. Should I sell it? And I was like, hell yeah, you should sell it, dude. Get out of here. Because he had another place. But so the snail mail, the things that get to their house, putting QR codes to bring them back to the website. In-person events. I have some people that do really good. Jared Johnson out in Utah. Any in-person event, like he goes all in on it. He's got like bounce houses and taco trucks at some of them. And he does a really good job with that stuff. And I look in his database, and those people actually come back and they end up doing things. People like to be, I would say that it's probably the most underused thing out of all of our clients out there. We went through COVID where you couldn't do any of that stuff, but I feel like now that it's coming back, people need to really lean in on spending money on those past clients, having those type of events. And then what Heather said, the math is clear. Like either the relationship went bad at the end of that transaction and they did business with the other person, or that agent just cashed the check and went, kept it moving and they're not going to do anything. And we have the technology to stay in front of them without actually making the calls. In our world, though, we provide 2 smart filters that are populated with past clients and then one for sphere of influence. And both groups get or should be getting a once a quarter phone call. It's a personal touch. One of the most popular things people ask us for is like common things that they ask us for is, what's your closed and SOI plan? And I'm like, I think you are the closed SOI plan. You're the one that needs to reach out to these people. The relationship has been built and the probability of getting a referral or another transaction from that person is pretty high. Take a couple of minutes a day and dedicate it to calling 1 or 2 of your past clients, and you'll see the results from that activity. There's a reason why it's statistically the number one place to go get your money.
It's interesting because you mentioned COVID and the lack of in-person events. In COVID, we weren't sure what was going to be happening at the beginning, March, April 2020, like what's coming next. But then it ended up just being #the hustle, like all that year, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of people who bought during that time maybe are locked in to low interest rates and are going to be less apt to move 3, 5, 7 years later when they might typically be apt to move. But it's not just about those people, right? It's about the people, I don't remember who it was we had on recently. It might have been Andy Cole talking about just what you said, Josh, the referrals. Yeah. So it's not going to be just about, well, those people probably won't even move. They're, 0% interest rate that they got on their 30-year mortgage. It's about the other people they're going to be talking to. So to your point, Heather, if you're not doing something, if maybe you did have a hustle there for a little while and you're like, I'm looking to shake something loose, it could be valuable to do anything especially if you're not doing anything, to reach out to those past clients, not necessarily for those past clients right now, but to stay top of mind for the future and stay top of mind for anybody they're talking to. Is that right?
Absolutely.
Let me say this too. During COVID, there was this big rush on selling your house. And there was also this big trend amongst real estate agents to stay all the way out of their database and don't talk to anybody that's been a lead at any time, because all they have to do is pick up the phone and go do a deal. There's a lot of people in your database, and now they're coming back, right? Because now it's time to work harder and dig through to get to the deals. There's a lot of people who listed their homes during that time. So maybe when you were talking to them, they say, oh no, I listed my home with another agent. Well, you listed it for $400,000 more than it was worth, and it did not sell. One of the groups of people I would totally recommend that you reach out to, including using this little text thing that we're giving you, find your orphan leads. I use it as the example in the video. We have tags for them. So if your database has any type of health to it, where you've been tagging people or categorizing them somehow, go find the people who were working with another agent who bought or sold with somebody else, and try to go find out if it actually ever happened, or maybe it did happen and now the property values went way up. And there's so many variables that you don't know about. And the only way you will know is if you try to reach out and just have a conversation with them and let them tell you what the situation is. Referrals too, like I love Andy Cole and the way he dials and things like that. And because one of the things that he talks about is you have to go into the conversation trying to earn the referral, not the appointment. Your appointments are going to come as you're talking to somebody. It's going to become pretty clear that you need to meet up or you don't need to meet up, but you can be as friendly as you can possibly be, give up all the customer service you can with the intention of knowing that this person knows other people. And sometimes that's going to be the deal that might save you for that month.
It's a good point, Josh. Many good points. All right, let's go to poll 3 results. What's your favorite method of communication with your existing leads? Look at all these people who are looking for extra points. 39% said phone calls. 61% though said text, favorite method of communication. 29% said email. Again, this is a multiple choice. 29% said listing alerts, and 21% said it depends. And I think we got a couple of comments. DC mentioned it, Doc Mel mentioned it. Whatever the lead prefers is probably the it depends there. What do you think, Heather? What's your favorite method of communication?
All of the above, of course.
Yeah.
We coach our agents. You call. If you don't get through, then you send a text and you send a video email through using the BombBomb integration in Sierra. You should be sending all three.
What about you, Josh? You already said, but phone.
I love phone calls, and I got to say, I don't even care who the people are that are making that statement about phone calls. I look at enough databases. I think you're lying. I think you guys might be lying about that. I like the phone call the most because that's the one that is like, that's where you're going to get to your appointment. But here's the thing. I like to use all the rest of those equally and without any favoritism at all, including like probably listing alerts is probably actually the best one because it's really non-salesy. It brings them back to the website and you can track all the property views. But the phone call for me, like my whole life I've been in phone sales basically. And so like to me, I just don't see how it's possible to get to the deal without the phone call, right? So you have to make the calls.
Just because it's somebody's favorite doesn't mean that they're actually doing it. Maybe that should have been the follow-up question. So which one, now that you mentioned your favorite, which one are you actually doing most often? All right. Let's talk about this. Josh, I'm curious, in this kind of market, we've talked about doing the work. We are in a low inventory market. Where do you counsel and advise? And we're going to go two different groups here. The first group being team leaders and brokers. Where do you counsel them to be spending their time right now in their professional lives?
Accountability. So the number one problem I think that we see there's been a huge push for people to either join teams or to start a team. And they're saying, hey, look, you're really good at sales over the past several years. You're a top producer, go start a team. Problem is, running a team is actually running a business. And sometimes just because you're really, really good at sales doesn't mean you're really, really good at managing people and running a business. So setting clear expectations for your team and then holding them to those expectations, and not in a negative way. You can easily coach a team member who's not calling the right leads or not calling enough leads. Hey, here's what we got to do to stay on track to get to our numbers, because to your point about the low inventory market, and we all kind of heard about the purging of the agents in the industry. The agents are either going to do one of two things, or one of three things. They're going to succeed and they're going to stay. They're going to leave where they're at right now and go join a team who's providing services and technology and accountability and expectations and things like that. Or they're going to go back to waiting tables, right? So that's kind of what it is. And so I believe that agents join teams so that they can get that leadership, so that they can get the help that they need. And it's really easy inside Sierra to set up, like as far as expectations, here's the people that you need to call. And then did you call them or not? And then a good team leader, I think right now, has to focus on getting to those transactions, because if there's a number of transactions in your market that are going to go down this year or in the next 90 days, you have a certain percentage of them in your database. You have to maximize all of those for your business, not for the individual agent, but for your business. And kind of what you need to do, and I just say it may sound not nice or whatever, every time you take a transaction, you're probably pushing an agent to go back to waiting tables, right? Because you're trying to thin this herd out there. People have maxed out their credit cards, the ones that are struggling to get their transactions. And right now we're starting to see a lot of people that are actually leaving as a result of it. They're saying, you know what? I tried to stick it in. I tried to stick it out. I can't do it anymore. I'm maxed out on my stuff. I got to go. And it's a dog world out there. But if you want to, you have a chance to take market share right now. And you're not going to do it if you don't manage these leads or manage your agents.
Accountability. Doc Mel says, so important. Not every good salesperson makes a great team leader / rainmaker. Heather, what about you? Where do you counsel or advise team leaders and brokers in particular to be spending their time right now in this market?
I think in two places, recruiting, because we're having a lot of movement in the industry. The agents are moving around looking for a new place to call home. They're looking for to solve a problem that they're experiencing. And then the second thing I think brokers and team leaders should be focusing on is not quite, it's in the vein of accountability, but more about reviewing and coaching those foundational basics with your sales team, that it's a muscle that wasn't really exercised in the last couple of years with the kind of frenzied markets we had, particularly here in Florida. So I think they need to be trained, retrained, or reminded at the very least on what to do and how to get this. But tools like scripts and role play events, internal challenges, things that drive, for the activities like those phone calls and things that drive lead engagement. Those are the things I think brokers can do to move the needle forward right now.
What about individual agents, Heather? Where should agents be spending their time right now?
The actions, the activities. That's the only way you're going to get to a closing and get to that commission check. And we always do that. We point to those things here in our brokerage all the time. You have to point to and focus on the activities that result in sales 1 to 6 months from now. Phone calls, follow-ups, tweaking e-alerts. Like, you don't know how many leads are in your database that their e-alert is wrong for what they're looking for. And they're never going to buy something because you're not showing them things that they like and want to see. So, but you can see based on what they're clicking on and what they're doing that maybe a tweak is needed. So taking the time to really understand your lead and understand the information you have right at your fingertips.
What about you, Josh? Where should agents be spending their time right now?
Work. It's the work, man. Everything always leads back to the work for me. And all the deals can be traced back to the work part of it. The single agent, you need to be in there dialing and looking for more people to dial and utilizing the technology. Like Heather mentioned, even if you're not going to change what the e-alert is made of, change the subject line, give them another e-alert. She and I both live in Florida and we both live at different beaches, different coasts, but I might go in, if I had nothing to do, I might go in and I might go give a fresh list, or I might send a text message out to a bunch of people. Hey, make a beachfront condos list, make a homes over $40 million list, make homes with a pool, give them something to look at. It doesn't always have to be what they're going to buy, but everybody kind of likes to look at houses. I know I do. I have no intention of buying a $12 million condo on the beach, but I love looking at them, And why not give them what they want? Because that's what they do when they go to Zillow, the ones that are just looking around. And we said some things earlier about blocked traffic and things like that, and deleting leads out. Google likes site traffic, and the more people you can get to search your site, the more Google's going to play off of that. So having people visiting your online store with that site traffic is key. And then the more that they enjoy you and your website, or the more they enjoy your site, I believe that the more they'll end up enjoying, or at least wanting to maybe meet you. And, just try to use every bit of technology that you have to maximize the time that you do use making those phone calls. But at the end of the day, it's a job, right? And you're going to have to do the work, and then you're going to get the results.
And Josh, if somebody is, and I don't know, it's probably arbitrary to pick a number, but let's say that a larger database is say 15, let's say 20,000 leads or more. Okay. So I've got a larger database of 20,000 leads or more. Josh, what do you recommend today that I do?
First of all, run a search for all the leads that would be in what I would consider engagement statuses. And you can build a filter for that and find out the ones that do or do not, are the ones that don't have an e-alert, and give it to them. It's in the big databases, you got to let that e-alert do a lot of the work. But again, it's I have no favorite channel of communication inside Sierra. I want them on an e-alert. I want them on a market report. They should be getting, in our world, and Heather kind of alluded to this too, we kind of we consider the email marketing, the marketing emails that we send out, whether it's buyer or seller focused. And then in addition to that, the first foundational layer of communication, that with e-alerts and market reports, which is all really email marketing, especially with the text compliance, let the leads engage with that. And then through automation, we have the leads basically auto assigning themselves a text campaign that matches kind of what they just did. And then that's the second layer. And then the third layer is bring the agent in to make a phone call, or maybe a series of phone calls. But in a large database, you can't, I guess I should I should change my answer. In a large database, you cannot really try, you have to have automation running to get a read on the reaction from all this real estate related content that they're seeing, so that you can allocate the dialer's time to the people who are actually focusing on your business. We have some people with 100,000 leads or 50,000 leads. And for those of you with 5,000 leads, you think that's a dream come true. Oh, wow. If I could just have that many leads. And I'm telling you right now, it's a lot harder than you think to manage. There's a lot that goes into that. And then you have to allocate human time to go react to and show properties and all that stuff. And it's a little bit harder than people think that it might be when they're looking at it from the outside looking in.
And Heather, if we'll just take that 5,000 number. If I come to you, Heather, and say, I've got a database a little more modest. I have less than 5,000 leads in my existing database. What would you recommend I do today?
I mean, if you have the luxury of a smaller list, and if you're a good salesperson, that list is going to get bigger, right? But while you have that small list, you have the luxury and the ability to really provide value to that database in a way that someone with a 50,000 person database just couldn't. So I would suggest don't die hard in automations and stuff unless those automations are reminding you of things. I would actually, spend some time, set up a plan to call those people or to provide them some information or some value, take a look at what they're looking at, build a landing page for them to visit and that you can market to them. There's a lot of things you can do that will show that you're the expert to those 5,000 people. And it doesn't have to take, weeks to develop it.
Listen, this has been a fantastic almost hour spent together. I think it's pretty cool because I think there's going to be a certain subset of people who are going to be discouraged, and then maybe the same subset encouraged. And here's what I mean. Discouraged because there were no, weird tips and tricks to make this happen, right? We just got a ton of actionable items that have real life data and narrative stories behind them from Josh and from Heather. But there was nothing crazy. Like, this is the one single text that's going to make magic, right? It's about doing the work, which is hopefully also the encouraging part. You got to do the work and do it smartly, right? So, and we've just gone through a ton of stuff. It's not just like, just work harder. It's work harder with a plan, like with smarter and harder. It's not either or, it's a both and. So I think this has been great. I hope that all of you watching have gotten a lot out of it. Josh, do you have any last thing that you'd leave everybody with?
No, the only thing I would say is that the work smarter, not harder is going to be key. You guys are collecting leads for those 5,000 and less size databases. Love on those people as hard as you can now, because that's your referral network as you grow that database bigger. I'm telling you, it's a lot more work when you get up there into those bigger databases. And use this technology that Sierra has. It's all very easy to build on. We always say, like, yes, we do provide these services for people, but we didn't do it because we are like Einstein level people that are super smart in that way. We do a good job, but you guys can make your own automations. It doesn't have to be 300 automations. You could build 3, right? Start simple and then build up from there.
Steve said, awesome info. Thanks so much. Work message delivered. What about you, Heather? You got something to leave everybody with?
Yeah, my broker likes to tell people this is separation season. The market's changing and the people who put their head down and work both smart and hard are going to take market share, and they're going to be our next big brokers this next cycle around.
Excellent.
That's true.
Well, listen, if you enjoyed this mastermind, invite your friends to the next one. We'll post a link for the sign up. Be sure to share it. If you sign up for one, we'll send you reminders about upcoming ones as well, so you never miss it. If you're watching live, thank you so much. And thank you to those who participated in the chat and in the polls. If you're watching us later, join us live for the next one. We'd love to have you. And please send your feedback to hello@sierrainteractive.com. Let us know what you want to mastermind about. Love that from Doc Mel. I'll leave it there. He says, my first time here, loved it. Thanks. All right. Thank you, Josh and Heather and everybody else who joined us. We'll talk to you later.